Hagar will become a thorn in Sarai's side, and Sarai will become a thorn in Hagar's side. And God will use both of them to increase the faith of each one of them. Hello and welcome to No Crown in Heaven for Bible Knowledge. Today we're in Genesis chapter 16. Previous episode, chapter 15, the covenant between God and Abraham, and the promise of the descendants to inherit the land. God took Abraham step by step from being frustrated with the fact that he has no son to the level of believing in God and who God is. That put him at rest, put his mind at rest, and he became at peace with the whole situation. So now things are going to get stirred up, and problems will come. But before we read Genesis 16, I'm going to go back to Romans 8. We've been putting, occasionally put Romans 8, 27 to 31 next to the life of Abraham, and compare what's happening in his life and what's mentioned in Romans chapter 8. So I'm going to go to Romans chapter 8 right now. Verse 27, now he who searches the hearts knows what the mind of the Spirit is, because he makes intercession for the saints according to the will of God. So God searches the hearts, and he knows the depths of the hearts. He knows exactly how we act or react for certain event in our lives. He brings this event in our lives, bring these people in our life to perfect us, to change us, because in verse 29 it says that we are predestined to be conformed to the image of his son. And verse 28, all things work together for good for those who love God. So that is, God will bring all the circumstances, the people around us, and the events to work together for good, which good is to be conformed into the image of his son. So let's see that happening in the life of these people in chapter 16. Now Sarai, Abraham's wife, had borne him no children, and she had an Egyptian maidservant whose name was Hagar. So Sarai said to Abram, see now, the Lord has restrained me from bearing children. Please go into my maid. Perhaps I shall obtain children by her. And Abram heeded the voice of Sarai. So obviously, what happened and the covenant that Abraham experienced, and the vision and the burning oven, smoke oven and burning torch passing through the dead animals that cut in halves, all that. He communicated that with Sarai, his wife. God said, you're going to have a descendant, and they're going to inherit this land. And now Sarai says, I am the problem. I am the one who is holding that promise to come to pass. So she comes with the idea of Abraham and Hagar, he can have a child through Hagar. So verse 3, then Sarai, Abraham's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife, after Abraham had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan. So that would make him 85 years old. So there, the work of the flesh, Sarai did not have the same faith that Abraham had. And she's trying to come up with a solution. Abraham heeded to her advice, and that was the work of the flesh in him as well. God is still working on him to perfect his faith. He's already maybe a step ahead or two steps ahead of Sarai, but he heeded her advice. So now, before we move forward, let's go to Hebrews 11 and see what Hebrews 11 said about Sarai herself. Hebrews 11, verse 11, by faith, Sarah herself also received strength to conceive seed, and she bore a child when she was past the age, because she judged him faithful who had promised. So that tells us that Sarai will come to that faith at the time. Now she's not yet. She's still looking at the problem and seeing herself to be the problem and trying to make things happen for her husband. He's 85 years old. She's 75 years old. And the promise is not going to come until 15 years later from that time. But they are trying to make it happen. Now God is going to work things to, he's going to orchestrate the whole thing with his sovereignty, orchestrate the whole thing to bring faith, to bring Sarai to believe in him, Hagar to believe in him, and obviously Abraham to be even more in tuned with him after he would just heed to her voice, and we'll go into the story. So how God is going to do that to Sarai and Hagar. Verse 4, so he went into Hagar, and she conceived, and when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress became despised in her eyes. Then Sarai said to Abram, my wrong be upon you. I gave my maid into your embrace, and when she saw that she had conceived, I became despised in her eyes. The Lord judged between you and me. So she's making him the problem now, because now Hagar is his wife, same as her. So she carried the consequences of her idea, and now she's regretting it, but she's putting the blame on her husband. So Abraham said to Sarai, indeed your maid is in your hand, do to her as you please. And when Sarai dealt harshly with her, she fled from her presence. So Hagar despised Sarai, her mistress, and became a thorn on her side. Sarai oppressed her, treated her harshly. Abraham just let the thing happen. He did not stand in between. So Hagar fled. So before we talk about Hagar, let's talk a little bit about Sarai. That until the day that God visits Abraham with the two angels to let him know about his judgment on Sodom and Gomorrah, and then give him the news that this time next year you will have a son, and she laughs. That's when the conversation happened, and he would tell her, "You laughed." She would say, "I didn't laugh." No, you indeed you laughed. That event with Sarah, between Sarah and God, where her faith became, she believed in God the same way that we talked about last episode. Instead of looking at the problem and looking what God can do to the problem, looking at God himself and who he is, and then the problem will be taken care of one way or another. So the problem that they don't have a child. She's trying to make it happen somehow because she's the problem. She's the one who cannot conceive. And she orchestrates all that. But God will use that to bring Hagar, we'll see, to faith. And God will use Hagar's despising her mistress as a way to discipline Sarai herself, carrying the consequences of her plans that came back on her. We know God uses different aspects. He used the wickedness of the Babylonians to judge the wickedness of the kingdom of Judah. So his sovereignty control all that. We're all acting according to what we want to do and wish or whatever, our free will, but God's ordering your step. You know, a man plans his heart, a man plans his day, and the Lord orders his step. So we have our plans, we have our free will, and we try to get these things done, but God orchestrates things around us to accomplish his purpose and his sovereignty to control everything happen. Yet we still have our free will. We talked about that last episode. However, the main point, I want to make a stop here. The issue of God searches the heart is essential of all he's doing around my life, around your life, all the people he's bringing to your life, all the events that he's bringing into your life, all the circumstances. He's orchestrating all that because he searches your heart and wants to expose what you have, either to bring you to a complete rejection of him, and then it will be the judgment, or to bring you to a complete faith on who he is and transform you to be in the image of his son. But his sovereignty working around you, he searches your heart. You have a free will, and he's putting everything around you to bring what's in your heart on the surface, to bring it out. So you reject or you be transformed. And that's happening in every human being life. God is capable of searching his heart, putting all the circumstances around him, and bring that out. So when anybody stands in the last days before God to be judged, they would have no excuse. They will have nothing to say, because God will bring all these things that happen that brought your rejection or your acceptance to the surface, and you would if you have rejected God, then you would have nothing to say. You will not be able to say, I didn't know. So that's what's happening between Sarai and Hagar now. So Sarai will come to faith later on. she has faith in God. She believes in God that He's existed, but she's still on the level of what God will do to my problem, and she will come to that faith later on uh, as we spoke. Now Hagar is going to have an encounter with Jesus right now. Verse 7. Now the angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, by the spring on the way to Shur. And he said, Hagar, Sarai's maid, where have you come from and where are you going? She said, I am fleeing from the presence of my mistress Sarai. The angel of the Lord said to her, return to your mistress and submit yourself under her hand. Hagar despised her mistress, so she got treated harshly because of that. So she's already at fault to despise her mistress or any human being. You know, you think you're better than somebody else because you have a better job, you have a better house, you have a better family, whatever, you know, you have better knowledge of the Bible, you know, whatever situation, you think you're better than somebody else, and you despise this person, then you're at fault. God is going to bring you to your knees. And so God is bringing Hagar to her knees by the harsh treatment of Sarai. Now she's running away, and he's meeting her to tell her, go back and submit yourself to your mistress. And let's go to one verse in Peter about this, and we'll come back. 1 Peter 2 verse 18, servants, be submissive to your masters with all fear, not only to the good and gentle, but also to the harsh. So that's a biblical principle here. Either you're a servant, you're a slave on these days, or you are an employee, you submit yourself to your masters. That's the biblical principle. She disobeyed that principle. She despised her mistress, and she fled. So now she's told by Jesus. We find out that this is a Christophany event. Christ is the one who appeared to her in a physical appearance. She didn't see like an angel or a glowing person. She saw a human being. Jesus appeared to her as a human being, and he's speaking to her. So he's telling her, go back and submit, because that's the right thing to do. You're at fault. You despised her, and this harsh treatment is the result. You go and submit. Verse 10, then the angel of the Lord said to her, I will multiply your descendants exceedingly, so that they shall not be counted for multitude. And the angel of the Lord said to her, behold, you are with child, and you shall bear a son. You shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has heard your affliction. Hagar is a character in the Bible that's overlooked a lot. God cared about her so much. And it says here, because the Lord seen your affliction. So obviously, Abram or Sarai acquired Hagar as a slave when they were in Egypt. Out of all the Egyptians that worship those Egyptian gods, pagans, God knew the heart of Hagar, so he brought her out with Abram and Sarai, so he would meet her here. And this is a picture of how God searches the heart. I cannot emphasize this fact enough. God searches the heart of every single human being and orchestrate everything around this person, as I mentioned. So for Hagar, she was elected. She was elected. She was the one in Egypt. Obviously, probably there is more that we don't know their stories, but she was the one that God searched her heart. She will believe. She would see the truth, and she would seek the truth, and she would believe. Let me bring her out of Egypt with Abram and Sarai, because I can orchestrate all these things to bring her to faith. All the others that was left in Egypt, you cannot say, oh, they never heard the gospel or the message, or never heard of the true God. God searched their hearts, and God worked things around their lives until the point of their rejection, and that's why they are left there. Same goes to Rahab, the harlot. The whole town of Jericho perished. She's the one who was saved with her household, because of the same God led the two spies to her house, because he knew she is the one that will receive by her own free will. And Hagar is the same thing. God brought her with Abram for the purpose of her faith. And God saw her affliction and saw her sincere heart, and that if it wasn't, Jesus would have not appeared to her. Verse 12, he shall be a wild man, his hand shall be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. So that's a prophecy about Ishmael and his descendants and his life. So that's just God's telling her the future of her child, but he's telling her, you will have a child and you will multiply. And we know all the Arabs came from Ishmael. Then she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her, you are the God who sees. She believed. She believed. She's coming from a pagan background. And no matter where you are in the whole world, even before technology and before internet and before TV and before televised evangelism or all that, since the beginning of the world, if you have a sincere heart and God will search that heart, God will bring all the circumstances around your life so you would believe. If you have a wicked heart that twists the truth, divert, and look for just pleasure in sin and reject godliness, God will put all your circumstances around your life to bring that out. And when you stand before him, you'll have no word to say. She believed. She called him. she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her. So that's proof that this was Jesus here. Then she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her. You are the God who sees. For she said, have I also here seen him who sees me, who search my heart. Search my heart, O Lord, and see if I have a wicked way. So here we see Hagar is going to go back and submit to Sarai. And Sarai would be like, what? God will use that in his life. And God will use Sarai in Hagar's life. And he loved both of them. And each one of them became a thorn in each other's side by God's provision and God's sovereignty to push each one further closer to God. Verse 14, therefore the well was called Bir Lahai Roy. Observe, it is between Kadesh and Bered. That's a very important verse here. We can just go over it quickly, but it says Jesus was here on that place speaking to Hagar. It says, observe, it is between Kadesh and Bered. God appeared there. So Hagar, verse 15, so Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram named his son, who Hagar bore, Ishmael. Abram was 86 years when Hagar bore Ishmael to Abram. Now, this is not the only time Jesus appeared to Hagar. He's going to appear to her again when she's kicked out. We're going to go over this briefly, but when it comes to our verse by verse, when we come to that section, we'll go over it in more details. But here, she goes back. She submits to Sarai. She bore the son. She raises the son 14 years. She's living in the household. She's submitting to Sarai. She's raising her son. She hears God's voice when he met her about her son. He would be multiplied, and his hand shall be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and all that. But she never forget that. But she doesn't know how it's going to happen, and now she gets kicked out of the house. And now she goes, and her son is dying from thirst, and she put him under a tree and run a distance, and Jesus meets her again. Because she's losing her son that God told her everything about him. The same what happened with Abraham before God performed the ceremony for that covenant. God, you have given me no son. How could that be? How am I going to have descendants to inherit this land? And God bring his faith a step higher. Watch last episode. And the same happening with Hagar here. Her son is dying. And Jesus appears to her again. We'll come to that. Thank you very much for watching. And see you next time. Please subscribe and have a great day. God bless you.